Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing this is exactly what motivates an ex to come back. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing this is exactly what motivates an ex to come back. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will likely want to know why your ex would come back to you. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing the 3 motivating factors for why your ex would come back into your life. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is friendship. So if you've been dumped and maybe a few weeks if not months have gone by, you've heard nothing at all, and then you receive a text from your ex, it can feel very exciting. Congratulations, you have now progressed from the no contact phase into the communication phase. But at this moment in time, you don't exactly know the intentions of your ex. Now, I'm not going to go into the intricacies of what you should be doing during the communication stage in today's podcast. This will vary a lot between situation to situation. However, what I would say is that you need to be wary of what exactly is being said to you. For instance, if something very clearly states, hey, how you doing? I miss you. I wondered if we could maybe be friends. Okay, if you receive a message such as that, that is a huge red flag. Because as a dumpee, you'd be very understandably excited to receive any contact and probably thinking, yes, I'm going to accept friendship. I'll accept a platonic friendship. That's fine. This is a step in the right direction. Well, unfortunately, it is very, very difficult to escape the friend zone. It's very, very difficult to have been put into the friend zone by an ex and then get out of it the other side and back into a romantic relationship. I would strongly suggest that if you've been offered platonic friendship by your ex, you politely decline. Saying in your own words that you will always see your ex as something more than that, and therefore you can't really entertain having an active platonic friendship. This isn't something which is likely to help you. Very few people indeed escape the friend zone from a position of being a dumpee. It's hard enough escaping a friend zone from a new connection in the first place, but if you've been dumped from a romantic relationship and then they want to friend zone you, this is near on impossible to get out of the other side. In this instance, a dumper is reaching out to you because their motivation is that they miss certain aspects of your personality. They miss certain aspects of what you brought to their life, but not enough, and specifically not romantic enough, for them to want to get into a loving romantic relationship. They would rather have a loving platonic friendship, and this is not going to help you. So when we're considering motivations for an ex to come back into your life, we can't ignore the fact that it might be friendship. Now, sometimes somebody will actively want friendship without specifically stating it during those initial few messages. Unfortunately, sometimes it can be very tough to actually weed out the people who are looking for platonic friendship during the communication stage. I don't suggest that you challenge your ex. I don't suggest you send them a message and say, hey, thanks for sending a message to me, but if you're just looking for friendship, I don't want to know, because that would come across as challenging. It would come across as negative. And unless they actually specifically mention platonic friendship, I don't suggest you mention it at all. Now, hopefully it would get to the stage where you do meet after the communication stage, and at that point, you can use your intuition, your common sense, feeling the vibe about what exactly your ex is looking for within your connection evermore. But this is something to be wary of, something to watch out for, because lots of people are dumped, but this doesn't mean that their ex, the dumper, dislikes every single thing they brought to the table. A lot of the time, somebody ends a relationship for a few reasons, but most of the connection they really loved, and they will miss their dumpee. But you want to be in a romantic relationship with them. And you can't have a platonic friendship with somebody that you want romance with. It won't work for you. If you accept platonic friendship, but unfortunately, later down the line, your ex-badumper is likely to reach out to you and say, hey, good news, I found a new connection, I've got a new girlfriend or a new boyfriend, do you want to meet up sometime so I can introduce you? And although you might think that is very unrealistic, unfortunately, it's absolutely the case. Because if you accept a platonic friendship, you're accepting what a friend does. And a friend would be somebody that would be introduced to a new romantic partner. So your heart will be broken all over again. If you think you're going to break through the friend zone via a platonic friendship where you're trying to actually get back together romantically, this is not likely to happen. More likely is your ex is eventually going to ask you to meet their new partner. So you don't want that. So this is something to be watching out for. It is a motivation that some dumpers reach out with because they do miss certain aspects of what you and them had together, but they're only thinking from a platonic sense. So just be wary of that and make sure that you don't get friend-zoned. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is intimacy. So sometimes many weeks or months after a breakup, the dumper will reach out to the dumpee, and once again, the dumpee is very excited by this. And why wouldn't you be? You receive that contact. But whereas in point number 1, I was discussing how some dumpers are just looking for platonic friendship, sometimes, as I'm going to speak of now in point number 2, dumpers reach out because they're looking for intimacy. And unfortunately, they're not looking for anything more. Now again, it can sometimes be difficult to actually understand exactly what somebody's looking for during those first few messages exchanged. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes a dumper will make it absolutely clear and quickly turn on the flirting, quickly turn on the charm, and quickly try and see if you have the same mindset as them. But other times it can be a lot trickier to understand exactly what they're looking for. And maybe you need to read between the lines depending on what they're actually offering you post-breakup, what they're actually offering you as a potential meet. Where do they want to meet you? When? For how long? What are the circumstances? Try and think about how they're seeing this. Try and understand them. You know them better than anybody. You should be able to recognise exactly what they're doing and why. Now listen, I'm not somebody who judges. And if you're somebody who is also happy to have intimacy with your ex with no strings attached, that's absolutely fine. But if you want them back in a romantic relationship, you've got to understand that this isn't necessarily going to be the best way to transition. Depending on the exact circumstances of the breakup, depending on the situation that you now find yourself in, it probably wouldn't be advisable for you to be intimate with your dumper if you're feeling the vibe that they're not looking for anything longer term or serious. It can be difficult. It can be challenging. I don't suggest you quiz your ex. I don't suggest you push them away by giving them ultimatums. But you need to be really feeling that vibe, understanding who they are as a person, reading between the lines, using your common sense. Is your ex-badumper looking to rekindle things, or are they looking to exchange what you had before, which was a long-term loving romantic relationship, and exchange that for something similar to friends with benefits? Now, if you're not interested in friends with benefits, then I'd be very careful of moving into that position, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get your ex back from that point. But what I would say is probably somewhat easier to move from intimacy to long-term romantic relationship instead of, in comparison to platonic friendship, to long-term romantic relationship. Because if we consider the intimacy factor, that really is what separates friends from relationships. So if it's a platonic situation, there's nothing which could be connected to the romance. If you're having intimacy, then you can see where that connection could grow. However, I do want to give you that warning, but it doesn't always mean the case. Some exes are really excited to be intimate again, thinking this is their way through to getting back together. It's not always the case. So please be alert to that. Please be thoughtful. Please read between the lines and understand what exactly is being offered. My suggestion would be, if you meet up with an ex, if things are getting intimate, if you're both happy to proceed, but you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if I'm going to hear from him again after this, then maybe try and make plans beyond that point. If you can tell that things are going really well and you get the vibe that things might be becoming intimate, maybe that's the moment to actually ask what their plans are later in the week or next week or further on, to see if you can arrange something in advance of any intimacy. Because then if and when you are intimate, what this will show is that you already have something in the calendar for when you're planning to meet again, and this is more likely to hopefully proceed in that direction. Don't always put yourself in a position where intimacy is the only thing on the cards. If you're going to meet up with your ex, make sure it's in a public place. Make sure you're doing something fun. Make sure you're enjoying yourself that isn't one-on-one in a scenario where they can just try and make this friends with benefits. But if you don't want that, you need to make sure you don't get that. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast, about this is exactly what motivates an ex to come back. And point number 3 is the fear of missing out. Now this is the one you're looking for. If you want an ex to come back to you, if you want to get back together, if you're wondering what will motivate an ex to come back to a romantic relationship with you, it is the fear of missing out on their best romantic connection. Now, often as human beings, we only take action when there is a fear attached. The fact that you're listening to this podcast is because you're fearful you will never get your ex back. That's why you're listening. If you felt you was in a happy, fulfilling relationship, you're unlikely to be listening to podcasts about how you can make that even better. You know, as human beings, we often act when things aren't great. And this is what will be a motivating factor for your ex to come back to you. The fear of missing out on their best romantic connection. And this is something that you as a dumpee can really help put in their mindset by becoming a version 2.0 of yourself, living your life to the full, living your life in a way where if they were to find out about it, they would be amazed, they would be excited, they would feel that you are their best option. Now, you may have to accept the reality that your ex-dumper is probably going to have spoken to different people, maybe even dated different people since your breakup. This is something you have to accept. They have to accept your situation post-breakup, and you have to accept theirs. Currently, you're both single, and you're able to go on dates, experience what you want to, beyond what has happened between you both in the past. This is something which is the reality. So you have to understand that one of the reasons your ex-dumper may come back to you is because they've realised the grass isn't greener. But unfortunately, that might mean that they have spoke to, if not dated, a few other people post-breakup. They can only come to a conclusion that you are the person, that they're not going to find anybody better than you if they've spoke to other people. Now, of course, this isn't always the case. Sometimes my version of a no-contact rule alone will help somebody decide that they miss their dumpee. So this isn't always the case, but they're going to date other people or speak to other people, but it might be something that happens. And if it has, you need to accept this. You can't quiz them. You can't give them a hard time. You can do your own thing as well, and they shouldn't be giving you a hard time either. But if your ex was to date other people and realise that they are not the person that they thought they were looking for, and if they then find out that you are living your best life and are a better person than they remember by being a better person today than you were yesterday and a better person tomorrow than you are currently today, if they find this out about you, then they're going to be very excited and intrigued to make contact with you. This is why if you implement my version of the no contact rule, and if you want more details of that, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out the playlist entitled The No Contact Rule. If you find out all of the information about what I suggest you do from this point, dumpees, then you can increase that chance of growing that intrigue and missing you, combined with them finding out elements through friends of friends or social media, whatever it may be, to the point where they want to reach out to you. This could be compounded by the fact that they've dated other people that haven't lived up to the expectation they hoped, and therefore the fear of missing out on their best romantic connection is ultimately growing day by day because they see it in you. You know, this is the fear I'm talking about. They are scared of missing out. And if they believe you are the one, that is going to be the biggest motivating factor for your ex to come back. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.